The rain lashed against the heavy glass windows of Elias's corner office, a rhythmic drumming that echoed the steady pace of his own heartbeat as he stared at the contract. Elias was a man who believed a person's word was their strongest currency, an architect who built a firm on the foundation of radical kindness and unwavering trust. For years, he operated under the quiet assumption that if you treated the world with grace, the world would eventually mirror that grace back to you in equal measure. His employees loved him for the steady paychecks and for the way he saw their potential, even when they were failing to see it for themselves in the mirror. But today, the silence in the room felt heavy as he realized that the very person he had mentored for a decade was the one who drained the funds. Julian, a sharp-eyed protégé whom Elias had treated like a younger brother, had leveraged Elias's inherent goodness as a weapon, turning his virtues into a series of devastating blind spots. As we peel back the layers of this betrayal, we find ourselves standing at the intersection of morality and psychology, questioning why the most virtuous often fall. Psychology suggests that being a good person is not a static state, but a complex navigation of internal biases that can lead to our own professional and personal undoing. The first crack in Elias's armor was his persistent positive bias, a cognitive tendency to project his own integrity onto every person, regardless of their actual track record. He viewed the world through a lens of inherent goodness, assuming Julian's late nights were a sign of dedication rather than an effort to manipulate the digital ledgers. This psychological filter is a beautiful trait for a friend, but it acts as a dangerous blindfold for a leader, where red flags are dismissed as mere lapses. Elias saw the good in Julian so intensely that he became functionally blind to evidence of deceit, proving that an overdose of optimism can be as toxic as lack. As the investigation began, Elias retreated into a second psychological trap, which was the selective ignoring of his own mistakes in the oversight process of his firm. To maintain his self-image as a competent guide, his mind began to rewrite the history of the last 6 months, editing out the moments where he ignored warnings. The human brain has a remarkable capacity for self-preservation, shielding us from the realization that our own negligence played a role in our current misfortune and failure. By focusing only on his virtues, Elias stopped himself from evolving, trapped in a loop where his ego refused to acknowledge that a good man can be careless. This lack of accountability wasn't born from arrogance, but from a desperate need to believe his methods were infallible, a mistake where kindness is confused with total immunity. Surrounding the office were awards, yet Elias felt a sense of inadequacy as he wondered what the industry peers would think of his spectacular and public failure. This led him into the third trap, an over-reliance on the opinions of others, where he allowed the judgment of competitors to dictate his internal sense of worth. He found himself paralyzed, not by the loss of the money, but by the fear that his reputation as a wise elder would be shattered in public. When we outsource our self-esteem to the collective gallery of onlookers, we lose the ability to make firm, independent decisions that are necessary for our own survival. Elias was so worried about appearing good to the outside world that he considered covering up the theft himself, just to avoid the social stigma of being a victim. As the days turned into weeks, the emotional toll of betrayal began to manifest as empathy overload, a state where he felt more pain for Julian's downfall. He lay awake at night, imagining the desperation that must have driven Julian to steal, projecting a tragic narrative onto the thief that the thief likely never felt. This hyper-empathy is a hallmark of the compassionate, yet it results in a paralysis of justice, where the victim feels guilty for demanding accountability from the perpetrator. Elias was drowning in the emotions of a man who had betrayed him, proving that when empathy is not tempered with boundaries, it becomes a form of torture. His decision-making process became a storm of sentimentality. As he allowed his heart to override every logical protocol his legal counsel suggested he should follow to protect life. He wanted to forgive because forgiveness felt like the good thing, ignoring the cold logic that suggested a lack of consequences would only embolden Julian to hurt others. The conflict between the heart and the mind is the tragedy of the virtuous soul, as they struggle to realize that logic is not the enemy. By letting his feelings rule his decisions, Elias was not being noble. He was being reactive, a distinction that many fail to make until the damage is irreversible. He also harbored an obsession with total fairness in his relationships, believing that every ounce of kindness he poured into Julian should have resulted in equal loyalty. This is the blind spot of fairness, the fallacy that the universe operates on a transactional moral ledger where good deeds always buy protection from bad outcomes. When the reality didn't align with his internal map of justice, Elias felt a sense of existential betrayal that went deeper than the financial loss of the company. He had to learn the hard way that the world does not owe you a reward for your integrity, and expecting life to be fair is a recipe. The final wall he hit was self-denial, a refusal to acknowledge that his own weaknesses, his need to be liked, and fear of confrontation were the true architects of disaster. He preferred to play the role of the tragic martyr rather than the flawed human who failed to set a password on the vault of his life. True nobility is not found in a lack of flaws, but in the courageous act of dragging those flaws into the light and working on them fervently. Elias sat in the dimming light, finally realizing that his goodness had become a shield he used to hide from the messy, complex realities of human nature. He understood now that self-awareness is the bridge between being a person who is merely nice and a person who is truly resiliently good in this world. The story of Elias is a mirror for all of us, reminding us that virtue without vigilance is simply an invitation for chaos to take a seat at table. As he picked up the phone to finally call the authorities, he wasn't losing his kindness. He was finally giving it the backbone it needed to survive. We must understand that our psychological mistakes do not make us bad people, but they do make us vulnerable to the shadows we try to illuminate. To be truly powerful in your goodness, you must first master the inner workings of your own mind and recognize when your best traits are used against you. The path to wisdom begins with the humble admission that even a heart of gold can be tricked if the eyes refuse to see the dancing darkness. Let this narrative be a blueprint for your own self-reflection, a guide to identifying the silent errors that might be draining your emotional and professional reserves right now. Your kindness is a gift to the world, but you are the steward, and you have a moral obligation to protect it from those who see weakness. As we close this chapter on Elias and his journey toward a balanced form of integrity, ask yourself which of these 7 traps is set in your life. Awareness is the first step toward a version of yourself that is both compassionate and unshakable, a person who sees the good but refuses to be blinded. The most profound strength is found in the balance of a warm heart and a cool, analytical mind that understands the nuances of human behavior and boundaries. Take a deep breath and realize that you have the power to rewrite your story, turning your past vulnerabilities into the pillars of a new psychological foundation today. Every decision you make from this moment forward should be informed by the knowledge that your character is a fortress, and every fortress requires a vigilant gatekeeper. Look closely at the people you have invited into your inner circle and ask yourself if you are seeing them for who they are or who you want. The shadow of a good person is often just as long as the shadow of a villain, cast by the same sun of ego and the same refusal. Elias looked out at the city lights and felt a new sense of peace, one that wasn't built on naive trust, but on the rock of clarity. He realized that by holding Julian accountable, he was performing a higher act of kindness, one that protected his remaining employees and maintained the sanctity of his firm. Justice is not the opposite of mercy. It is the framework that allows mercy to exist without becoming a suicidal act of self-destruction for those who care. The journey of the soul through the landscape of morality is fraught with these psychological pitfalls, yet each one provides a vital lesson in the art of living. We often mistake being a doormat for being a saint, forgetting that even the most sacred temples have walls designed to keep out the elements that erode. As you walk through your own life, Remember that your light is meant to guide others, not to blind yourself to the pits in your path. Elias began to draft a new set of company bylaws, ones that prioritize transparency and mutual accountability over the dangerous concept of blind, unearned, and untested loyalty. He felt a surge of energy he hadn't experienced in years, the energy of a man who has finally integrated his shadow and stepped into his complete identity. The lessons of the 7 mistakes are not meant to make you cynical, but to make you wise and enduring so that your goodness can actually reach people. In the end, our legacy is not defined by how many times we were tricked, but by how we rose and used it to build authentic light. The world needs more good people, but it specifically needs good people who are awake, aware, and capable of standing their ground against the forces of greed. Consider the way you handle your own mistakes and ask if you are hiding behind the mask of goodness to avoid the work of a psychological audit. Ask yourself if you are seeking the approval of a crowd that doesn't know your heart, sacrificing your own peace for a reputation shattered by one rival. Examine your empathy and see if it is a bridge that connects you to others or a chain that drags you down into their chaos and exhaustion. Reevaluate your relationship with fairness and accept that while life may not always be just, your response to that injustice is the true measure of your maturity. Elias closed his laptop and walked toward the elevator, feeling the weight of the world lifting as he embraced the complexity of his own humanity and flaws. He was no longer just a good man in the eyes of a naive public. He was a resilient man who understood the price of his integrity. The rain had stopped, and the air outside was crisp, reflecting the state of his mind as he stepped out into the night, ready to face rebuilding. His story is a testament to the fact that we can always start over, provided we have the courage to admit where we went wrong and change. As you reflect on these words, let them settle into the deep recesses of your mind, acting as a silent guardian against the 7 traps of hearts. The evolution of your consciousness depends on your ability to see the world as it is, while never losing the vision of what it could be, wisely. You are the architect of your own psychological environment, and it is within your power to design a life that is as robust as it is kind. Do not fear the process of self-discovery, even when it reveals parts of your nature that are uncomfortable or at odds with the saintly image you project. Authenticity is far more valuable than perfection, and a good person who knows their own capacity for error is far more dangerous to evil than 1,000 souls. Elias drove home through the quiet streets, seeing the world with new eyes, eyes that were no longer clouded by positive bias or the mist of empathy. He saw the beauty in the struggle, the necessity of the pain, and the importance of the lessons he had learned from the person he trusted most. We are all works in progress, navigating a complex sea of emotions and social signals that can lead us astray without a reliable compass of self-awareness. Let your compassion be a fire that warms your home, not a forest fire that burns down your entire life in a misguided attempt to help others. True kindness is a disciplined practice, a daily commitment to being fair to yourself first, so that you have the resources to be fair to everyone. The mistakes of the past are merely the raw materials for the wisdom of the future, and every betrayal is an opportunity to refine your own soul. Elias walked through his front door and felt the warmth of his family, realizing that his ability to protect them was as important as his love. He sat down to write a letter to his younger self, a letter filled with the warnings and the insights that he wished he had long ago. The words flowed easily now, unburdened by the need to sound perfect or the desire to hide his own role in the collapse of his world. He was becoming the mentor he actually needed, a man of balanced virtue who could look at a thief and see the crime and the humanity. This is the ultimate goal of the journey, to reach a state of integration where your goodness is a choice, not a compulsion, and your strength. The world will continue to test you, and the 7 traps will continue to appear in different disguises, but you now have the tools to walk. Your journey is unique, your heart is precious, and your mind is the most powerful weapon you possess in the ongoing battle for a life of meaning. Stand tall in your truth, hold your boundaries with love, and never apologize for protecting the light that you have worked so hard to cultivate here. As you continue your walk through the complexities of the human experience, remember that you are never alone in your struggles to balance your own conscience. The lessons we have shared tonight are a roadmap for your internal growth, a way to ensure that your legacy is built on the ground of truth. Be patient with yourself as you unlearn the habits of a lifetime and replace them with the new, more empowering patterns of a person who is awake. The future belongs to the good people who have the courage to be wise, the strength to be firm, and the humility to check their blind spots. You have the power to change everything, and it starts with the simple act of looking in the mirror and seeing the flawed, beautiful person today. May your heart remain open, but your eyes remain sharp, and may your path be paved with the kind of goodness that can withstand every storm. Every step you take in the direction of self-awareness is a victory for your soul and a contribution to a world that needs more strong people. To continue this journey of transformation and stay updated with more insights into the human mind, please subscribe to my channel Deep Mind Portal.